hopefully. Okay, great. Hello, Dan. Thank you for running for office and for seeking the Riveters Collective endorsement. We're conducting this interview on the traditional territory of the Nooksack Tribe and Lummi Nation. This interview is being recorded to be used in endorsement decisions and also may be shared publicly. Your screen name will be on the recording, so if you'd like it to be different, please change it. We have 5 questions for you, approximately 3 to 4 minutes each. We plan to leave room for questions at the end, if you have any questions of us. To start out with, how would you prefer to be addressed?
Dan's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. We're just going to quickly introduce who's here tonight to listen to this interview. So why don't we go ahead and start with Lychee?
Hello, Dan. My name is Lychee Leong. Lychee is my first name. I apologize for not being on camera. I don't have a camera on this computer. And I moved to Bellingham about 10 years ago from New York City. So I'll hand things over to Suzanne.
Hi, Dan. I'm Suzanne Munson. I've been in Bellingham since 2010. I'm happy to be here and thanks for running for office.
Hi, Dan. I'm Beth Hartsock. Good to see you.
Sorry.
It's okay. And Yoan Savela is doing tech support for us tonight, but she says she's muting herself for the rest of the meeting, so I'll introduce her.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and start the questions. I actually forgot who was going to do that.
It's me.
Okay, that's going to do that. Thanks,
I am. Okay. Okay, so our first question is, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing Bellingham today? And how can a city council member contribute to solutions for this challenge?
I think housing affordability is one of the bigger challenges, along with homelessness. I think that's an attendant issue. But as it relates to people being able to afford to live in Bellingham, 56% of renters are rent burdened at this point, and it's not getting any better. What I did with my contributions in the past were to create 2 affordable housing levies. One was in 2012, before I was on city council. That was the Bellingham Home Fund. I was one of the 3 architects on that, along with Paul Schisler and Greg Winter, to create a fund that was passed by 57% of voters the first time, and then 67% of voters the second time. That has created hundreds of units of affordable housing. The second piece to that is there was a House bill called 1590 that was introduced and passed at the state level about 3 years ago, and I brought that to Bellingham to pass that here councilmanically, which means that only 7 members of the council are voting on it, and all 7 said yes to it. Together, those 2 funds create over $7 million per year of housing for people that are vulnerable, and seniors, families with low incomes, veterans, people with disabilities, all benefit from that program. The other pieces are the 2 bills that passed recently at the state level regarding missing middle, 1110 and 1337, missing middle, and the ADU ordinance that passed. I was supportive early on in the local efforts of the ADU ordinance here in Bellingham, and stood by that one. My neighborhood, Sunnyline neighborhood, has the most ADUs in Bellingham, and the only thing I've noticed is more people on e-bikes. Basically, that's really the animating difference. There's not a whole lot of change. It's gentle infill. I think it's effective infill. It's not going to solve all the problems of the world, but having fourplexes, duplexes within single family neighborhoods will help. To me, it's an equity issue. The more people that I live just a little bit outside of downtown, and I can walk down there, and I want more people to have access to urban villages, to our downtown core, and those are amenities that every person should be able to enjoy if they choose to do that.
Thank you. Now I have to find my question list again. Okay, there we go. Question number 2. How do you plan to involve residents in the city's decision-making process?
So I've served on over 30 boards, commissions, and task forces since I started on city council. And before I was on council, I was on about a dozen other ones, including being the youngest president of the York Neighborhood Association and first renter at age 27. It's important for me to include those voices in decision-making processes. I voted to remove the citizen requirement for boards and commissions for the city to make it residents. So people that are here as residents in our fair city can serve on those boards and commissions. And I intend to keep listening to those voices. Every 2 weeks we have public comment at Bellingham City Council. We also had a public hearing this last Monday, and we continue to hear those voices. I strongly support the Engage Bellingham component of our website, and I have meetings with constituents on a very regular basis, trying to listen in. No person can be an expert on everything, so I think it's important to listen to people who have lived experience, who are subject matter experts in their fields. On several of the boards and commissions that I've served on, I learned a lot about domestic violence prevention and treatment for offenders. On the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, I learned quite a bit about how to keep people out of our incarceral system and track people to keeping their jobs and going back to or staying in school. So there are many ways to invite that participation, and those are some of the ways that I've done that in the past and will continue to do.
Thanks, Dan. Question number 3 is, do you support a local minimum wage that is higher than the state minimum wage? And if so, how much higher?
I think there's inherent problems with that. So we've been hearing from the residents from the Eleanor Apartments. So Eleanor Apartments is managed by Mercy Housing Northwest, and Mercy Housing Northwest is a low-income tax credit nonprofit, basically, and they tie the rents of the residents to the area median income, which is in the case of the folks that live there, it's 30% of the area median income. What's happening is that when that area median income goes up, seniors on fixed incomes, their rents go up. And so an increase in the minimum wage would therefore increase the area median income, which would then further rent burden low-income seniors on fixed incomes, which I think is an unintended consequence of the citizens initiative that's proposing that. I don't know that was considered, but that is a direct consequence. So if the minimum wage goes up, then the rents of low-income seniors on fixed incomes will go up.
Okay, thank you. How have you supported or been involved in the Riveters Collective or other civic engagement organizations?
I'm a member of the Riveters Collective and civic engagement organizations. I don't know what you mean exactly by that, but I'm a supporter of the League of Women Voters, have been for a long time. I support the platform of the Riveters Collective in reviewing the values and vision of the Riveters. They're largely, if not uniformly, in alignment with where I come from as a person. A lot of these are democratic values that support people first, and that's where I come from when I legislate. It's all about trying to provide solutions for people.
Okay, thanks. Interesting. Okay. As a city council person, how can you support staff in pursuing new and innovative strategies to accelerate progress toward our community goals?
Can you be more specific on what community goals that you're referring to?
You choose.
Okay, thank you. Dealer's choice, huh?
Any goal.
Any goal. I think that we have opportunities to provide for better responses, for example, for behavioral health. So I was the city council person that spearheaded the alternate response team. So for decades, the response to a behavioral health crisis in most communities was to send a police officer with a badge and a gun to a person that was experiencing a mental health crisis. So I looked at the Cahoots program out of Eugene, Oregon. There's another program or other programs in Denver. It's called the STAR program. There's another one in Albuquerque and one in Portland, where they've been experimenting over the years with sending in like a designated crisis responder and a nurse to a behavioral health call. And that's exactly what I worked on starting about 2.5 years ago. And then finally, because of COVID, largely, it got delayed. But we were able to implement that in January of this year. And I was at a grocery store last week or 2 weeks ago, and I was going out to my car, and I noticed a young person, a young 24-year-old person who was laying on the ground and having trouble sitting up and was shaking and had like clear medical issues and maybe some behavioral health issues. And so I called 911 and requested the alternate response team come and respond to that. And they did. And I saw them in action. It was a nurse and a designated crisis responder who came, and the person needed help. He needed food and water and transportation to the Ann Deacon Center for Hope, which is a crisis stabilization center that I helped usher in a few years ago. It opened up actually last year. And so I think that we need systems of care that are beyond the traditional model of sending a police response or solely a fire response to everything, and so, or to every situation. So I co-created the alternate response team, and I want to be clear too, I didn't just vote for this program, I helped build it over the course of several months with EMS, fire, police, other health responders. And I also helped co-found the GRACE and the LEAD program. GRACE is ground level response and coordinated engagement. That was, I helped co-found that after researching different models in different cities. I went to San Francisco, Philadelphia, DC, Spokane, Seattle, Shoreline, and looked at their models of, how do we work with people who are frequently contacting our 911 systems, and they just really need more of like a personalized wraparound services, like a case manager and help in that regard. And so I worked with our hospital, the Whatcom County Health Department, the Mayor's Office, Opportunity Council, to develop the GRACE program. And we worked on that for months and months and developed it. And now that program works with over 100 clients. And then we realized that we still had a gap in services where people were getting in contact with having too frequent contact with our criminal justice system. And so I worked with the county prosecutor, Eric Ritchie, to develop the LEAD program, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, which is kind of a misnomer. Most of the people that end up in that program are not through law enforcement. They're what's called social contacts, and they're referred into the program via case managers and people at the Opportunity Council, intake people, people at base camp who are seeing people that need just further assistance. And in that program has expanded quite a bit now. And that program is working with about 120 people. And that's the program that can help people who have substance use disorders or mental health issues, and does help those folks to get services that they need. And housing is a huge component of that. So to Beth, answer your original question, I think that, largely my contributions have been in housing and behavioral health services with our community's most vulnerable people. And that's where I continue to be a leader, and I will continue to work on those issues going into the future. And sorry about the chirping bird behind me. I don't know if you can hear that.
I love the chirping bird.
Yeah, it's not a sound effect.
Yeah.
I am on
Great.
my porch too, so I get it. So do you have any questions for us about anything?
What is your process for endorsement? Like how does it work moving forward?
Who wants to take that? Beth?
I think I will, and I think it's actually written down, so it can remind me. Yeah, okay, so we are doing all the interviews this week, and then We expect to make recommendations to the board of directors by June 19th. And after the board votes on endorsements, then we'll call the phone number that you provided to let you know of our decision prior to announcing it to the public. So I would say around the late June.
Okay, that
is
sounds great.
Probably a reasonable timeline.
Okay, excellent. I think that was the only question that I had tonight.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks so much for meeting with us and for seeking this endorsement. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank
And I
you.
appreciate your time as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Have a great evening. We'll see you.
Bye.